if you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months. Hey guys, welcome back to Be the Standard. I'm your host, Danny Jamazo. I'm here with my best friend, as always, Mike Burns. And today we have a very special guest, a very close friend of mine. Her name's Sandy Papavero. She is the Director of Sales and Marketing for CEO Warrior. And again, a very close personal friend. Sandy, awesome to have you.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm excited. It's fun to be in a formal situation with you when we're not goofing around or I'm watching you speak on the stage. So this would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the reasons I want to have you on is because, you have been such a good friend and you kind of got me back into the public speaking space. And I think one of the reasons that we click so well is, your mentality, your approach to business, how you conduct yourself and like kind of your everyday life. And just, I really like how you go out of your way to help people. You really are big on that. And you really do a great job, I think, of just helping people shift their mindset.
Well, thank you. And we have a lot of similarities. And can I share how I found you?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
All right. So I'm always looking for somebody I see has the utmost potential. And I don't like to say that's gone through some sort of struggle because one struggle for one person may not be a struggle, right? We all have a different story to tell. So I was looking on LinkedIn one day and I came across your podcast and I came across your story. And I think for me, it was really just the way that it was your presence and it was the way you carried yourself. And I knew there was more. I wanted to grab more out of you. I'm always looking for ways in order, if my colleagues were on here right now, they like to say, I get inside your head and break you down. And I saw like this untapped potential in someone that had so much to offer. Right. And so I decided to have a conversation. We talked for 2 hours about life and where we want to be. Right. And now you're going to be speaking on our stage for the third time.
Yeah. And I always appreciated that, you reaching out and, kind of tapping into that and kind of helping propel me forward into getting back into that speaking space. And yeah, I'm excited. Next week will be our third time working together. So yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that people don't understand their own blind spots, and one of my superpowers, I'll say, is to be able to look at someone and know that they're not using their struggle for the better. And I mean that in a way where everybody goes through something in life, and sometimes we work so hard to keep it down in the pit of our stomach and show this level of strength and honor. When really, if the vulnerable side of you comes out, then other people can attach their situation with you and they feel safe. And they feel
Mm-hmm.
safe telling their story. And that's why, I knew there was more to you than just that story. Because we don't always want to identify with that story or our past. But how did you get over it? And how can you create the vulnerability and the space for other people to gravitate towards you? Because that's really when we can start to influence and help people to get through it. Because some people may watch you, Denny, and the life that you lead and where you've been and look at you and go, man, I can never do that. Like, I don't know how he got there. I don't know if I have the bandwidth to even create that in my life. And sometimes they're intimidated by it. And that's why I would say to you, like, tell your story, man. It's such a good one. And what were the steps in which you got to where you are today?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so appreciated. Like, I mean, again, thank you for your service to our country, but thank you for your service to what you're doing for others that you guys are capturing every week on your podcast, and you're changing lives. And that's what I'm about every single day. Like, we have an opportunity to do so many great things for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that, coming up on the Mike's leadership, I think, I picked up that he does really well also is tapping into people's potential and kind of pulling out the good in them. And I think I saw him do that a lot with just so many different soldiers, including myself. Um, but yeah, man, that's something that you're really good at, I think, is identifying talent and leveraging talent in the right way.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And
Yeah.
why do you think that is where do you see yourself in that role? Does it just come innately to you, or do you have to work at it? Like, isn't there like an overarching view that you see people in this light, and then you can tell by their language or their human behavior of what they're capable of? I think, is that kind of where you are too?
What do you mean, seeing the potential in people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I've always had, like, as military leaders or any leader, a lot of guys want to stack their team with like the best people out there, and I'm always like, no, no, give me. I'm looking for, I guess, character, or just looking at somebody that I can develop. And I was like, I'll take any of these guys and I'll make them good. You know what I mean? Now, if somebody has a super bad attitude and you try different leadership styles and techniques, and then you still can't get to them, then that is what it is. But typically, I like to see the potential, almost like you said. You saw potential in Denny, and in the leadership realm for the military, I see this. I see the same. Like, I see potential in people, and I want to get the best out of them.
I love that, and I look at, and not that you can even put war and business in the same breath, but there are some similarities. When you're in business, you are fighting for your life
Mm.
in just a different way, right? We're fighting for other people's lives as well. So there is a brotherhood in business as well. And I look at it as, if we can get people on our team that can come to us and say, well, these are my strengths. And that's how I look at everyone, Denny, and I look at I'm very self-aware, and I know what my strengths are, and I know what others, and I can look at them and say, well, if this is your strength, how do I rise you up into your greatness? And then as a leader, I always look, how can I make you a better leader? Because we're all leading each other. There is no one that's just a follower. And I feel as if some people have lived in that identity for so long that it takes time, but it takes someone like me and really Mike, the way he just spoke, to kick their ass a little bit into believing in themselves. That really is, it's a self belief system.
Yeah, and I say all the time, like I think the most valuable asset or that you can deploy as a leader is leveraging the talent within your team, right? Um, I was in charge of guys overseas under Mike's leadership, and there were guys underneath me that were much better with maybe a certain weapon system. Maybe they were better at programming the radios. Maybe they were better at like just these certain things, right? So those are the guys I leaned on for those particular skill sets. And if I needed help, I went to them. And that's what you want. You want a team full of leaders, not a leader and a bunch of followers, right? Because you're not like, you can be a leader within a team without being the leader of that team and have the title. You just really just need to take ownership of your most valuable assets and skill sets and drive that forward within the team. And I think that's what creates a successful environment within a team, an organization, a business. And you'll hear me talk a lot about that next week.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. But I would look at our team, and I look at all of our history. Every one of us has come up the ranks in some way. Obviously, like most people do, they don't really know who they want to be when they grow up, when they get either out of college or their first job. And you kind of have to find your way. And you don't really realize the unresolved, whether it be trauma or experiences that are within, inside of you that have held you back or kept you stuck. And Mike just said something really interesting before about characteristic. All I ever hired for was character. I didn't care about your resume.
Yep.
I can make you great. Like,
Yep.
I know that I can. And I just have to look for, what does this position need? And really it's about the core culture. And that's just like at CO Warrior, everything we do is about culture. And you know me, you've heard me shout it from the rooftop. Like, I want to be inspired. I want to be motivated. Every day that I get on that stage, that I have an opportunity to train with my colleagues who, we all have different skill sets, but every one of us is a leader in our own right. And we respect the hell out of each other for what we do really well. And we rise to the occasion for each other when it's not our strength. And I think that's what makes us so unique in the coaching organization. And I also think that businesses fail because they're always looking for skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that all the time in the software space too, right? They put you through these long, drawn out interview processes trying to find the perfect candidate, as opposed to, this is what I see that they could bring to the table. This is their potential. And if I, you know, apply, my leadership skills to that, I can really turn him into something great or her into something great. Uh, they're looking for perfection right out of the gate, and they're trying to do the least amount of coaching and actual leading possible in that development process. And that's what I've always noticed about Mike, is that he is the exact opposite. I've seen him do it. I Mike kind of caught me at this kind of tail end of my career, early on in my career, where I was kind of like coming out of this phase where I really wasn't all that high on the military. I wasn't, probably the best soldier, but Mike kind of caught me on the tail end of that and saw potential in me and turned me into what I think ended up being a relatively good leader. Um, and it was just because of him that in my work ethic and putting in doing the things I needed to do, but it really was him pulling stuff out of me, and I think that's so important. And to that point that you just made.
Yeah, just like with my CrossFit gym, my coaches, I've said this for years. I mean, I've had that gym for 10 years. I've trained a lot of coaches. I can train anybody to be a coach, but you can't train give a shit, right? Like, so if
Mm-hmm.
somebody that really cares, then I'm like, all right, like, let's work with this person. Very, very few people have, I would say probably nobody, maybe one person throughout all the years that wasn't able to get up to a good level of coaching. But they got to have if they give a shit. That's what I look for. It's like, all right, that person cares. This person really wants to do this, and then I want to work with that person. If somebody we've seen it overseas, let's go back to the military realm. You got somebody he or she could be a stud, right? They could be the best person out there. They're really good at what they do, but their attitude sucks, right? Sometimes you can change that around, but if they don't have the give a shit and they're never going to come around, that you don't want them in your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of that, Mike, is due to fear.
Yeah,
The high ego drive is due to fear that's living inside of them, and I see that a lot in sales. I
yeah,
mean, I come from Wall Street, for crying out loud. Like there was tons of fear there, and there was the high ego, but they were lacking on the empathy side.
yeah.
And we see that in business. Look, there would be a lot more millionaires, billionaires in our society if people could lower their barrier to entry. And I mean that in a way where they don't create their own vision. It all becomes about them. They keep control. They don't delegate properly. We hire improperly because we
Mm-hmm.
don't think anyone can do it. Our expectations are too high. We have a perfectionist attitude. So I love that you said that, Mike, because we can take that person and create. And that's my favorite thing to do. I never want perfect.
Yeah,
And I don't want you to be
never.
like me either, right? I want you to compliment me
Yep.
and my strengths.
So on that, I would just kind of just for the listeners, kind of if you wouldn't mind giving background on where you come from and exactly what you do right now.
Sure, I'd love to. In a 30-second commercial, my dad and I owned a construction company, and he was also a financial advisor. So we used to flip houses, and I was still in college. I was actually in high school when I started selling until I got smart enough to get my
So
insurance license so that I could split commission with him because he was taking all my money.
yeah,
My dad was a huge risk taker and always taught me that I can do anything that I want. But he said that one of my biggest problems was I was always all over the place and I was never focused enough. It's still the case. I will say I definitely lacked some focus, which I'm learning. And I'm learning from, I mean, Denny and I have this conversation often, but then I stepped into a role where after college I didn't always want to work for dad and I wanted to see what else was out there in the big world. So I started with a company that was under a million and we went to 65 million and I fell in love with business.
wow,
And I fell in love with the whole process of making money. And I wanted to go in and create a company, create a structure, create a culture. And I believe 100% that our culture was the reason that we drove the money to 65 million. Like the revenue would never have been there, but we had such synergy between my two bosses.
wow,
Um, but then I was having kids while I was there, working part time. I opened a bakery. We owned funeral homes, so we had like
wow,
all these different. I always had my pipeline filled. I had 3 kids in 4 years. I worked the bakery and the funeral homes, and then I went back to finance. So I went back to the city. I worked trying to help people put together proper succession planning because of what I had gone through in our business, and we almost lost it, to be honest. And so the failures teach you lessons, and I wanted to go in and help others create the same. And with that experience, I learned what I was seeing from business owners was their scarcity mindset, not abundance.
mm,
So it kind of shifted my, and somehow I fell into the lap of a guy named Chet Holmes. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. He was a master sales and marketer.
I've heard that name.
He wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. He was a phenomenal human being. So was his team. So with that, Tony Robbins wound up joining the business breakthrough that Chet Holmes ran. And I just was like, this is where I belong. I loved every second of what I did for it because I'm still being a business strategist, still helping with succession planning, still building out a future for business owners. And that company kind of, Chet got real sick. He had lung cancer, and it started to just break away. Since then, his daughter has actually taken over, and then I kind of just repositioned myself. Went through hell, lost a lot of money during that time. Everything that I built into my early 30s, and then got divorced. Oh no, wait, I had a fourth kid, and then I got divorced. I have to keep my timeline. Um, but I consulted, all these years and in that space. I went back to school to become a neurolinguistic practitioner because I wanted to get inside of people's minds a little bit to understand how I can affect them differently.
Wow.
And I took all these pieces and I started consulting on my own, wound up doing restoration, grew 2 companies with restoration, consulted probably about 60, and then I wound up at CEO Warrior because I believed in the company so much, and it was always on my vision board that I wanted to go and train and coach. And I'd been on stage many times, but now it's different.
Yeah.
Now you're up there, like, knowing that every second and everything that you say has the opportunity to change someone's entire perspective
Mm.
on what success means
Yep.
and what does it do for you. So that's pretty much where I was and where I am. And our company is a training implementation company that trains every member of a trade company's staff. So we work with the owner all the way down to whomever is in there learning. It could be an apprentice. They sit in our room with road warriors, marketing, leadership, operations, outbounding, war planning, which you're coming to next week, Denny, which helps them to understand and familiarize themselves with how money moves, put their budget together for next year, sharpen their tools. And really, it's been a wild 3 years. I mean,
Wow.
we've just done some great things. So yeah.
So, just real quick. So, what is your, if you don't mind me asking, your exact role as CEO Warrior?
Well, I am the director of sales and marketing, but I also, my hand's always in the pot. So I work with my team to train. So we don't always have a training going on. When we do, I step into that role.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm wearing, like, overseeing a team of sales, and then we also are working constantly on the marketing and putting ourselves out there. We've only been around for 10 years, but we were established from a company that became a $32 million plumbing, electrical, and HVAC company.
Wow.
So we took all of those principles, and the founder has left. So now it's up to us to continue on helping companies. And I also sell every day.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, obviously, that's a great story. I mean, you've got a lot of experience, and one thing that's definitely steps up to me is like you're a hard worker. I mean, that's a lot to do, and a lot to balance, to have a family and have multiple businesses and still doing like back and forth with finance. I mean, that's impressive.
Wow, thank you. I feel as if, and not to bring up like bad stories or anything, but my father was such a risk taker. My mom was more of the one who was stowing the money away and didn't want to put herself out in a position where she complete scarcity mindset, where my
Mm-hmm.
dad was all about, like, let's go full in. Well, when the economy crashed, my dad sort of crashed with it.
Uh,
And I always looked at him, and this is my story, and there's more. We don't need to get all into that, but he fell down when he should have gotten back up and been a role model and modeled that behavior for me and for whether it's my kids, regardless. And I resent him for that. Of course, I've let go of it,
yep.
but I never want my kids to look at me and say, you know what, one thing, Mom, you failed,
Mm-hmm.
and failure's fine, but you have to keep trying. You have to keep pushing.
Yep.
You have to keep reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
Every day is different. And that's where most people stop. That one time they get knocked down, they stop.
Yeah. I know you said you don't want to tell stories, but I think it's good that you tell these back stories, so because context of what you're doing and what drives you, like it brought you full circle to your kids. You want to make sure your kids see that you're always going to try and work hard. I think it's important to give that context. So good. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, and obviously we all have something deeper, but Denny has affected me in many ways, and I'm so grateful that I had met him. And he
Likewise.
absolutely, he said to me one time when we were on the phone, this will always stay with me. And he said, there's more people out there that are doing more with less.
Yep.
And that will forever stay with me. And I'm so happy that I think every time that I have a bad day, or I mean, I got hung up on it probably 50 times yesterday, or, rejection is fine for me.
Yeah.
You have to keep going. You have to keep pushing. You have to keep finding a new way. You have to seek out mentorship. And we're all built for resilience. We just stay in that identity, in that space, because we're in fight or flight. That's how we were brought into this universe, was
Yep.
to keep ourselves safe. So it's only the
Yeah.
special ones that keep going.
Yeah. It's we have this, natural, whatever you want to call it, to just protect ourselves, right? It's just natural for us to want to be protected. It's natural for us to gravitate towards what's easy, what's more comfortable. Um, so it takes a special mindset and a different type of a person to get through that. And I think it's something that can be learned. I think a lot of people think that it's something that, you either have that or you don't. You either work hard or you don't. But, I think all of these things, and just a shift in your mindset, it's almost like a skill set geared towards your mindset, if that makes any sense.
No, it's
Uh,
100% right.
you can change that it takes work, it takes reps, right? You can't just I'm just going to be a hard worker today, I'm just going to shift my mindset today. It takes like these small wins that you need to stack over time, and then before you know it, it's just who you are. It's just a characteristic of what you've become. But one of the things I want to touch upon real quick with you, because I've seen firsthand the relationships that you've built with the clients at CEO Warrior. And I've met so many of them now and heard their stories, and because they've told me how that my stories impacted them. But I know you do a lot of consulting with them as far as their business, and kind of you're very direct and upfront with them. This is where you're fucking up. This is where you need to improve. This is kind of what a plan forward needs to look like. So I know you have these hard discussions with your clients. What would you say is the biggest problem that you see them having? Because I know one of the things you've said to me in the past is they can't get out of their own way in a lot of cases.
There you go. And that again, we are all afraid to be vulnerable. I'll circle back to when we first started our discussion. It's the vulnerability, it's the ego. And because we don't ever feel safe in the space of which we're sharing, everybody wants to talk about how successful they are, but they don't have the wherewithal to look deep inside and say, well, this is where I want to be. So I think you were in the room the one day when I was doing the vision, and I was creating that vision for them. It's so interesting how we stay so in our space of reactivity in the day to day as an owner, or even as somebody who's working for a company. We've never aligned our visions. We don't even know how to write the vision down. So we get in a car, we plug in the GPS of where we want to go, but we don't do that with our own lives. And it's fear. It's what holds us back. And that's why I did my breakfast with Sandy this morning on our CEO Warrior page, was all about what the top 1% are doing. So I'm going to go back to what you just said was, I'm direct with them because they need that,
Yep.
right? We can't sugarcoat. You don't, but I'm always coming from a loving space. It's a non-judgmental room. It's an open forum, and nothing leaves that room. This is between us and the people that are in the room.
Mm.
And in order for me to help you and guide you and support you, I need to know where you're coming from. And you hear the stories, you hear how open and people become, but they have to be able to be okay with that space. And I look around the room when we're doing the painted vision, and I watch people just stare at the paper.
Yeah.
And this is something they've never thought about. So let me ask you this: how are we going to create a company that's on a mission if we don't have a vision for our company? We don't have
Mm.
a vision for our own personal lives. How are we going to align our teams with that vision? If you guys are out and you're in combat, and we don't know what the mission is, and I don't know what your vision is in order to get us safe to the other side, how am I going to fight hard for you? And it's the same concept, a little bit different, because again, our lives aren't on the line in just a different way. But we have to think of it as we're in combat every day,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saving all of us that are not with you while you're fighting for our freedom and our safety in our lives. And that's exactly what a business owner is doing. So if I can't get you over that hump, if I can't create a discipline in you, and that's just the beginning, because discipline is just a start. It has to go with the habits. The habits follow. It's your daily habits.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start to see that momentum, because I don't want you coming in my room and I'm not going to rah-rah you. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to motivate you. Yeah, I can. But there's no stickiness to motivation.
No,
And then,
absolutely not.
right? I mean, I'll go out there and we'll play flag football or we'll play tackle. Actually, at my 5'2", I'll still kick your ass. But we go out there and my family, that's what we did every year. It was like a holiday thing. We played football and I'll go out there and I will make sure everybody's on board. And that's awesome. But then what comes the next day? Do we still have that level of motivation? We wanted to go out and kick
Mm-hmm.
ass. That sustainability is where people start to go back under because the force of average pulls us back. It's
Yeah.
our natural habitat, right? So how do we keep that sustained level of momentum?
Yeah, and I like what you said in there about vision, right? Because I think a lot of times people, you know, they are here, that's point A. They want to get here, that's point B. And it's everything that takes place in between, right? That is so important. And that vision is just imperative to getting to anywhere you want to be and to achieving any goal you want, right? Like this podcast for me is a great example because I kind of had this vision in my head of, sharing my story, getting it out there, not really sure where it was going to go or any of that stuff, right? But I took action, just started doing these things, started networking with the right people. And it's funny how things grow and change and new things come along and all of these things happen simply by taking action. So it's one thing to have a plan and a vision to go along with that plan or a plan to go along with your vision, but it doesn't need to be this detailed, you know, in the weeds plan where I have to hit all these objectives and I can't move on to the next one until I hit this one. You have to be able to move and pivot accordingly along that journey. And you never know what's going to happen. It just comes from taking action and making moves along the path of getting to where you're trying to go along that journey with that vision.
Yeah, but it's a fear of the unknown. That's why most of us don't
Oh,
really
absolutely.
life.
And that's why I say the most important thing you can do is just get going.
Yes.
Like you don't need to know
Absolutely.
what's in front of you. Just get fucking moving, right? Because everything, is gonna fall into place. Either you're gonna get smacked in the face and you're gonna realize that you're in the wrong direction and you need to pivot, or you're just gonna continue to float and go along on that journey and accept what's coming to you, right? Does that make sense?
So yes,
But
because that's called adaptability. Most of us are so rigid and we're so in our
yeah,
own lane. We can't see outside of it. It's very blurry. So it's very safe in my little world,
yeah.
right? We don't want to go into the uncomfortable. We stay
Hmm.
comfortable. And your body pulls you back and it's your brain. It's a brain. I mean, studying human behavior, that is our brains feel safe. And reaching outside of that box, the unknown, is why most people don't make changes. They
Yeah.
stay broke. They don't think about how to better themselves in self development. They don't invest in their skill sets. They don't invest in their thoughts, in their mindset. So when I see someone, and again, it's just something that I see, I want to pull that out of them. Like, how dare you when so many people don't have this skill? Like, we owe it to ourselves to be better. We owe it to ourselves to show the world what it could look like. And it's not from an ego drive, it's from if I can serve other people at the highest level, then we can have a better society and better working environments. We don't have these, economic breakdowns. But the world doesn't contribute. Only a few choice people contribute,
Yep.
right? So we have to kind of take that and run with it. One thing about I will say is when you start to look at the vision and it gets scary, the scarier and the bolder, the better. And we all have to have that journey. And I remember even getting on stage here was different than I've ever done. And I was nervous and I wasn't very good. And now I own it. I love it. I can't wait to get on that stage. And you were the same way, right? You had never gotten up on that stage and you were a little
Hmm.
nervous. I yelled at
The
you and I was
first time I was nervous, and the next time I was just I wasn't. I think the first time I was a little nervous, right? I was definitely nervous. Then the next time it was like, I think the nerves went away after about 45 seconds and I was just me.
You
And
were
that,
it was so much better. And reality is you kept pushing. You were
mhm,
like, let me get back up there. I can do it
Mm-hmm.
even better. And I love that you recognized, and I kept saying to you, your story and the way that you talk about your story is what others are they're going to cling to that
mhm.
and know they're not alone. Otherwise, if you just went up there and you're like, look at me and I'm all muscular and lift weights and eat well and all the girls love me, like you're going to intimidate them and they're not going to move. They're not going to become better. So those stories of how we get there and how we adapted. And the best part is I can help you do that. I can walk that path with you.
You
You're not
have
alone.
helped me. You have helped me. The feedback that I got from you and Kevin and uh, that the day before is when I spent an hour and a half on the phone with Nick too, and he was giving me advice on how to speak and all of these things. So I think I have the right mentorship on how to just keep getting better. It's cool.
But you seek it out, and that's what's
Mm.
different about you. And I want to tell people that are listening, seek out a mentor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't stop your dreams. Don't stop what your targets are. And what's the end that we should have in mind? And never think about how we're going to get there.
Mhm.
Think about why. Why do we want to get there? And think about the what.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
mean, you brought it up earlier, and I wanted to go back. But glad you brought up the mentorship. But like, that's probably the quickest way to get from point A to point B is to get somebody that's done it and done it
Yeah.
better than you, and someone like you that's going to stick their finger in your eye and let you know that you're messing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like we've talked about this a lot on the show. Like, I never want to surround myself with people who are just going to give me a pat on the back and say I'm doing good when I know I'm not. I want people around me that are going to be honest with me and challenge me and tell me, "Hey, you're messing up. You might want to fix this or look at this." And obviously, they do it in like you said, a place from love, right? Because they're generally trying to improve you, but sometimes you got to be able to take that, and that's why we talk about our circle is so very small because I don't want people around me that are
Yeah.
just gonna be like, "Oh, you're doing so good. This is no. I want people around me that are gonna challenge me and that are above and are gonna pull me up. You know,
Yeah, and I think that's why our friendship's been so rock solid for the last going on 15 years is because we've done that for each other. It's been like, yeah, no, Denny, this is where you're fucking up and this is where you need to be better. And we're very candid with each other about those things. And you know, I think even a lot of people among their closest friends are afraid to even do that because they think it's going to fuck up the friendship or whatever. And if that's the case, then you really don't have much of a friend there, in
yeah.
my
If
opinion.
it's coming from like she said earlier, I love it. If it's coming from a place of love that
Yeah.
you're honestly trying to help a person, then they should never take
Yeah.
it personally. It should never be a bad thing.
Right.
You can take it personally because it is a direct reflection on you and what you're doing in this world. And one person's opinion is a perspective. It's not a reality.
I love
But
that.
when someone is really
So good.
trying to, right? Like we have to look, everybody comes from their own perspective. That's why we have to always refocus. When someone tells us something, we have to say, is it coming from a place of goodness or is it becoming, an envy or whatever the bad side of that is? Because some people really truly want to hold you back. It's like the crabs. They want to pull you back down into the pot. But if I've had the same best friend since I'm 5 years old, they will tell you anything that you want to know about me. There's never been a day where they haven't given me their 100% most sincere feedback.
That's awesome.
And it's never done with malintent, right? Everything is done with, I want you to be better, but this is why you're messing up. And same thing, I come from an Italian family. Come to a Sunday dinner, and the two of you will just be amused all evening because no, everybody calls each other out on their shit, and that's fine because if you have people that care enough about you, not want to watch you make mistakes that are going to affect your life, then I'll take that every day of the week because I'm growing too. I'm never not working on myself. I'm never not thinking about how I can be better because I have fucked up enough to know that there is no thing as perfectionism. It's a constant battle moving in the right direction every day. And Denny, I don't know if you heard me talk about this at our last meeting, but what I say all the time is we spend so much time thinking about what we don't accomplish, whether it's in our day and our lives.
Mhm.
We rarely focus on a few things that we did well that day. And
Yeah.
where our goes where our energy keeps flowing.
Yeah, it's almost like, especially highly competitive people do this often, right? It's like, okay, well, I tackled this issue, I reached this objective. What's next? They don't really allow themselves a particular level of grace to kind of like absorb like the wins, right? And that's important. That's important to understand. Is understanding like you know and learning from those wins as well as we talk so much about, well, you learn more from a loss than you do a win. And that's true, right? I think we learn more from failure than we do success. But it's still important to kind of like, at least internally, like just absorb those small wins and, you know, uh, give yourself or allow yourself that little bit of grace instead of just being so highly competitive and wondering like, okay, what's next? What's in front of me? Like, what can I go conquer now? I think that's important as well.
The small wins, I think, can serve as your asthma check too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, hey, like I know I'm going in the right direction. I'm getting these small wins because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get to where they're at because just like you said, they don't ever look at the small wins. They only look at, I didn't accomplish this, and now they're always looking for the next thing, and they're not satisfied unless they crush the whole thing right away. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the small wins can act as a
That was
compass.
actually a huge, huge statement. And I have to tell you why. When your subconscious mind doesn't know right or wrong, it's not positive or negative. It only knows what you tell it. And it doesn't go back and forth. A can and can are the same thing. So when we keep telling ourselves the same story, it becomes our story. And we can't get out of it, right? We get stuck in that space. So we don't have to have a torrid childhood or a traumatic childhood. If you study adverse childhood experiences, it could be that you were never good enough for your parents and you always have to keep striving.
Yep.
You always have to keep that win going because that's the only way that you've got love and acceptance in your household is if you were perfect, a perfect child. You
Yeah.
hear that a lot. So we didn't have to have, trauma in order to, but that could be very traumatic. And it is very traumatic because then you don't ever have the love, respect, and appreciation, always feel abandoned when you don't get the things done. So I have to unpack that out of their mind. I have to take them and understand how they are living in this life and unpack it in their heads. And they don't really know I'm doing it often. But when I start to get in, I can hear the language. I can watch how, when they tense, I can see how their facial movements go. And now we can start to get somewhere. Because I can't just say, well, you don't have to be perfect. Because words are just words. We have to get inside what has been conditioning for years and years and wire your brain to think differently. So, it's something that's an added benefit to a business strategy. Because I can teach you business strategy all day long,
Mm-hmm.
but again, how are you going to make it move in the right direction?
Yeah, like you're saying, like you can have the best business strategy all you want, but if you don't have the mindset and all of the other things, those intangibles to drive it to fruition, it's it's kind of useless. It's
They
just
fail.
yeah,
Failure.
yeah.
And I get on the phone with people and they say, well, I don't have the money to do this, or I'm not sure if it's, how much is this going to cost me? And right away, I know that they're coming from, that
Yep.
scarcity. How do you not invest in yourself to spend, 2 days with people that can literally change the trajectory of your mind and your business?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not put yourself in that room instead of
Yep.
they want to go to a rah-rah event to, take down 4 notes that they throw in the backseat of their car and they don't do anything with it because
Yeah,
they're so enamored by the big gloss of a very large $1 million company. Hey, buddy, how about we get to $1 million first, and then you can go to some of these shows, right?
right,
Steps, baby steps. So
right.
that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. I know you have a hard stop here shortly, so I just want to ask you one more thing before
Yes,
we head off.
we're
And
good.
and it kind of flows with what we're doing here, this whole discussion. But you have a business owner with a vision. Where do they start, and what should their first steps be to kind of move towards that objective?
So if you're thinking of a startup, again, don't be perfect, but have the reason for the passion behind it. Understand why you want to start this business, because if you're not passionate about your startup, then you will fall on your face because it's hard, it's work, those 80-hour weeks of grinding and looking, and people tell you that putting together a business is easy, they're crazy, or they fell into it. But luck and opportunity and whatever else goes into the perfect recipe of a business, get mentorship, seek out help, and learn from the lessons of those who have already made the mistakes and shorten that learning curve. Because we can only eat mac and cheese for so many weeks.
Love it. No, that was a great answer and kind of exactly what I was looking for. But yeah, this has been a great discussion. We've been talking about getting you on here for a little bit, so
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you came on. Again, you've been a tremendous friend, mentor to me, and I really appreciate you and just the energy that you give to me when I need it. And you're just such a good friend, and I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, me too. You're gonna make me sad, and I don't cry. No, I cry all the time. That's my downside. But I think that everybody's meant to come together for a reason, and you've done so many things for me as well, and have been there in the same light. And the respect that I have for you and your colleagues is immeasurable. And even the ones that have reached out to me, I've spoken to a bunch of your colleagues and your friends, and
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride. And the stories, it makes me better every day, because they bring something to the table that I'm still trying to find, I may be missing. So putting all those pieces together, that's why we kind of make the perfect storm. And I'm just so proud of everything we've done together up until this point. And you better kick ass next
Of course, of course.
time.
No pressure.
No pressure. We'll say no pressure, Denny. You got it.
uh,
No.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just end on this, but what's come from all of this is just been the best part about it has been the network of people, and the fact that you've met some of the people that are now in my network who are relatively new to me, and
Mhm.
it's just continuing to grow. And I think when you have a solid network of people around you and you start to share your experiences, everybody starts to win together. And I think that's the idea, is just to win and to help each other and help as many people along the way. So that's really been the most fun for me about this whole experience of everything. So
Yeah, and look how
uh,
many people you've come in contact with, and that's a true meaning of networking. It's not passing out business cards and telling somebody your stupid 30-second elevator pitch, right?
yeah,
I've been
yeah,
to plenty of those, and you have 30 seconds to make an impression on someone. But in reality, I don't want to just impress you. I want to be able to give something to you. And how
yeah,
can I give you something and then you give me back? Like
yeah,
the law of reciprocity is everywhere,
yeah.
and people forget it. So they're so myopic in their approach to business and life.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about giving. Like that's something that I've heard Mike say, is like the more you give, the more you receive, and like not receive in like tangible like gifts or anything, but like the more you get from other people. I mean, the focus should be on what you can give and what
Yeah,
you
I
can
think
provide and how you can help.
I
And
honestly believe us as human beings, we're meant to serve others,
yeah,
and the best leaders out there are servant leaders, right? Always the best leaders out there. I have
Right.
that mentality, like you talked about earlier. Like they subordinate their ego, no ego. They're servant leaders, and they always want to pour into other people and you know, not selfishly, but it comes back for you. You
exactly.
get results from it.
Yeah,
It will come back, and in reality, like meeting the people that are in your world helps me to understand you better and how to kind of push you in the direction you need to go in. Because who we surround ourselves with is a lot. It says
oh yeah,
everything. I mean, there's that small circle, like you and Mike being friends for all these years. Like if you met my best friends, you would just be like salt to the earth people, just amazing. And I think you'd enjoy, how they roast me a little bit, which is fun. They keep me on my toes and they keep me very humble, but I am humbled. I mean, I have four amazing kids. I have these phenomenal friends. I have close relationships for so many years. And giving back, again, it doesn't have to be monetarily, it can be of yourself,
Yep.
yeah,
right? And not in a people pleaser way, because we have to watch that too. We have to make sure that what we're doing is for the betterment of all of us, and not just because we feel that we have to serve them. So servitude can go in many layers, and we have to be very careful, or else we will deplete our energy, and then we have nothing to give back out.
yeah.
So I think that's a really good point to remind ourselves, is that we don't want to just go around serving everyone. We want to be very select in who we pull into our universe.
I've honestly seen that. Not to go off on a weird tangent there, but a lot of people I know that they would just serve others and they would never take care of themselves, and ultimately they would end up badly for them. They end up a lot of times suicide, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
And you guys have seen a lot of that in your world. You know, my dad served in the military as well for the Army. And for me, that was, I love that my dad was a veteran. I wish that, and this is on me, I wish that at times were a little different when I was going. I really didn't want to go to college. I mean, I did because I hated to go into traditional learning. Like, I don't like to sit in a box. Danny, you
Yeah.
know, I can sit still for 5 minutes. So, but sitting in a conforming environment, like what says behind me, you know, for the rebels and the out of the box thinkers, for me, it's all about how can we contribute to the world by not listening to others that have more power over us, but don't ask anything of us to contribute
Love
to
that.
their
So
decision making,
Yeah.
right? So why are we all walking around like little soldiers? Instead, let's break the mold and figure out a way that we can create our own economy within ourselves and the people that we truly care about and that we know that can go out there and serve it from our perspective. And I think that's what we're missing. And traditional schooling has led us to believe that this is the only way to make money. And it's really, and I don't want to go down, like I'll go on that all day. But so when people come to me and say, I really want to start this business, I'm like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
Because this is your way of breaking and risk taking and doing things that most people in paving paths, like the 9 to 5, that's awesome. And if you want to go work for someone else, like for me, people who work for us, they have so much autonomy. But
Yeah.
that's because we created the leadership and we created the processes and the strategies around it. And that's when we became more successful, was creating their own autonomy to make decisions based on what we wanted as an overarching vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome. And yeah, no, thank you again for coming on. It's really awesome. Just that's awesome to have this conversation with you. And again, we've been talking about it for a while, so I appreciate you always.
yep, glad it happened. Mike, thank you very much for having me. And I will see you guys. Well, not you guys, but I'll see you then again.
I will see you next week, and I will
it was
deliver.
great meeting you and interviewing you.
Great to meet you as well. Take care. See you.
All right, take it easy.
Bye.